Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner. This is Alex Paknadel. Great to see you again, mate.
Great to see you again.
How
How
are you,
long's it
pal?
been?
It's a very good question. Maybe about 6 months. I think the last time you were on was when we were talking about All Against All, right?
Yeah, which is just about to wrap up.
Yeah, right. So we were there at the beginning of that journey,
Yeah.
and now you're getting towards the end of it. But we're here to talk about something entirely different, which is your new Red Goblin book.
Yeah. I think I mean depending on when this goes out, yeah, that dropped. The first issue dropped February the 8th. And no one was more surprised than me. Apparently it did quite well. So that was great.
Well, everybody watching this can pre-order the upcoming editions of Red Goblin from the links attached to our conversation, but can also order some of the variants of issue one that are about to drop into the store from these same links as well. So everybody watching this will be able to pre-order the upcoming issues, but also some of the unique variants as well. So they're all a rich amount of Red Goblin goodness is attached here, mate.
Two second prints, I think, for issue one as well. So they'll be dropping in as well.
There you go. Exactly those. So Alex, what was the history of you being involved with this project before we get into the book itself?
I think it was by invitation, and I think my good friends Al Ewing and Ram V, who were both working quite prominently in the sort of Symbiote office.
Yes.
I think lobbied quite hard for me to get a book. There was talk of getting a new Symbiote book out, because it's a well that never seems to run dry. There's always a big appetite for symbiotes. So and they knew that they wanted to do something with Normie Osborn, the grandson of Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. And this is a character who historically in Dan Slott's run, he was very briefly the Goblin child, who was a sort of horribly sadistic sort of but possessed kind of sidekick of the original Red Goblin, who was Norman Osborn wearing the Carnage symbiote.
Yeah.
But then Al and Ram set up this kind of new sort of Venom framework, with sort of Dylan Brock, the son of Eddie Brock, as the new Venom. But he has this ability to kind of to make symbiotes effectively, to sort of to remix them. So take a little bit of symbiote from the Life Foundation and a little bit from over here, and sort of to make up new symbiotes. And they basically used that as a mechanism for getting a new symbiote onto Normie Osborn. Yeah, I was approached by the Venom office, and they said, do you fancy doing this? And you've got quite a bit of a creative runway, in the sense that Venom is very kind of continuity rich at the moment, and it's very kind of cosmic. So we're perfectly happy if you want to run away and do a kind of very street level thing. Then you can go away and do that. And I sort of went away and I had a bit of a think about it. And it's funny, I think, because a podcast kind of picked up what I was trying to do with it a couple of weeks ago. Because issue one came out, and they were thankfully, and I never take it for granted. They were very kind of effusive about it. But they said, oh yeah, this is basically, this Red Goblin book sort of reads like sort of Succession, but with the Osborn family, and that was exactly what I was going for.
Yeah.
That sort of, I basically said, yeah, I'm just going to do like a really horrible kind of family saga with like the most dysfunctional family in the Marvel universe, and just give this kind of 12-year-old kid like his own lethal symbiote. But the sort of the mantra that I kept sort of going round and round in my head, because I was trying to sort of figure out the dynamic of, because it's a tricky one to sort of write a kid, because you inevitably, like writing for kids is probably the most difficult thing you can do. I mean, I'm not doing that, but writing a kid, the only thing I could do was basically just sort of to sort of write my way in, was to sort of think, well, this poor kid has seen so much. His grandfather's the Green Goblin. He's had a terrible time. So I'm basically just going to kind of very deliberately write him as kind of more mature, because he's kind of, he's been through a lot, right? And just make him sort of in charge of this symbiote that's effectively like a. I kept thinking in my head, it's basically a vicious dog. And the mantra that I kept sort of running around in my head the whole time, and I keep coming back to it in the book, is, there are no bad dogs, there are only bad owners. And that's basically that's the kind of linchpin for the whole series, is this 12-year-old kid who's just trying to control this wild animal that bites people's heads off and likes chocolate.
I mean, it's such a brilliant hook, mate. I'm so glad that you got into the succession of it all, because that was my killer question I had waiting for you.
Sorry,
what's but it's good you went there. Without me even having to say it, which is perfect. That's the paradigm, right, mate? So was that an idea that had been living with you for a while?
Not really, no. I mean, it sort of naturally presented itself because I went away and sort of read. I every time I get a Marvel or DC assignment, I always kind of very diligently go and do my homework, because fans are smart and I think they know when you haven't. So I went away and all that I kept, it's basically just sort of proceeding from that original storyline and just sort of following it all the way up kind of Golgotha, right? And just kind of going, well, hang on. So this kid's been sort of against his will, has been sort of turned into a sort of killing machine that attacked Aunt May, but he's actually this really nice kid. So the place for me to kind of emotionally pick up from is, well, how does he feel about that? And how does he feel, now that his grandfather is kind of supposedly reformed, but but he's done this to him.
Yeah.
Does he trust anyone? Who can you trust if your grandfather sort of, seals you inside a killing machine? But I mean, the succession of it all just seemed really kind of logical, because it is that that incredibly sort of toxic sort of familial dynamic where everyone's kind of jostling for position and nobody really trusts each other. So I have this wonderful sort of extended cast that I can sort of just sort of pick up whenever I want, as long as, I mean, it's an interesting one though, because the symbiote office is technically part of the spider office, but we still have to basically cross the aisle and sort of ask the Spider-Man guys, like, can I borrow Norman for like an issue? Yeah, all right, then you can have him. So yeah, it's sort of dipping in and out, but it's great because it means that we've got, like the book, Red Goblin is probably, it's the symbiote book that has sort of one foot in the spider office at all times. So we get to sort of play in both sandboxes, which is a huge privilege.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a marvelous evolution to have, as somebody has been, interested in the Spider Verse for such a long time, and to go from the original introduction of Venom, the original introduction of the symbiote costume, and for it to get to the point where we're sitting here in 2023 and there's a Venom office, I just think a symbiote office, if you will, at Marvel, that's just so amazing that it's proven to be such a rich set of ever evolving, ever expanding concepts.
I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I think the appeal of it is kind of very visceral as well. I mean, I was talking to Casper Wingard about it, and he was just sort of showing me, like, he had this Instagram filter on his phone that I think for the Venom movie, where basically like his kids were just obsessed with it, of kind of use this filter and they look like Venom and they just kind of make faces at themselves. And he just said, "Oh, does your kid love Venom?" And yeah, like my little boy absolutely loves Venom, absolutely loves Carnage. And we were sort of asking about it, like, what trying to kind of unpack the appeal. And Casper just went, "Well, it's obvious, isn't it?" I went, "Well," he goes, it's a dinosaur, but Spider-Man." I was like, "God, you're right." Like, that is the symbiotes. If you get right down to it, it's like, what if Spider-Man was a dinosaur?
That is very well said. Very, very perceptive. It really is. And speaking of great artists, which Casper is, you've got a great artist on this book as well, right?
Yeah, Jan Bazaldua, who's a Marvel Stormbreaker. I mean, that was a real sort of that was taken certainly by me as a real sign of kind of trust and faith in the book, which I hope was sort of, or it was and is rewarded. But Jan was part of the big sort of intake of artists that Marvel are kind of actively investing in, actively trying to kind of promote their careers and everything. And the work that they've turned in on this, I mean it's quite demanding, I think, because I try and lean into drama because of the sort of familial nature of the book. I'm trying to lean into drama as much as I am to action. It's sort of, there's one for you, there's one for me, there's one for you, there's one for me. So, it will always ultimately come down to sort of, kick explosions. But between that, you want to have sort of, I needed an artist who could sell sort of, a tense, pregnant pause between, mother and son. And I think there's always a temptation, I think, particularly in sort of mainstream comics, to kind of make those moments bigger. And one thing I love about Jan is they have this incredible ability, like, I mean, there's a splash in issue 2, and I just said, look, here's your Spider-Man splash, just go with it, because like one of the things that Red Goblin has is there are kind of 2 modes to the character. There's the kind of the crazy symbiote mode, but then there's the kind of the mode that Normie is forcing it to impose, which looks very much like Spider-Man, because that's his internal ideal of what a hero looks like. So that's what the symbiote looks like until it's threatened, and then it goes crazy and the teeth come out and everything. So I just said to Jan, look, there's your Spider-Man splash, just have at it. And it's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. But the thing that I love about Jan is, they really can sell those really, they can sell a look, they can sell drama as well as action. It's the complete package. I couldn't be happier.
I think that's very well said, Alex, and it's I think it's a great book. You should be justifiably very proud of it. Long-term spider / symbiote reader here, I love it, and I can't wait to get into issues 2 and onwards. It's you should be very pleased with what you've come up with, mate.
Oh, thanks, mate. I mean, honestly, I mean, one of the things, I mean, I had an opportunity in issue 2 and onwards to kind of introduce someone from the Marvel universe that I've wanted to kind of, I love the kind of, you come into sort of Marvel or DC and you build your little sandcastles in full cognizance of the fact that they're going to be swept away by the tide, which I genuinely find that quite beautiful. The sort of the ephemerality of it, I find that very beautiful. The fact that you come, you do your thing, and then it may or may not. You're part of this larger story. But I got to bring back someone who actually means a lot to me, and I'm going to be very interested to sort of see how fans react. But that's one of the things that, having as much freedom as I have on this book, I could just sort of go to sort of the editors and just say, look, you haven't seen this person in sort of 35 years. Do you mind if I? Oh yeah, sure. Have at it. And that's great. It's just the little bits of leeway you get, with a book like this, where, as long as you kind of hit your action beats and as long as you hit your dramatic beats, as long as you're doing your job, you just get your, you get to sort of go off the leash a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're doing that spectacularly. I couldn't think of a better trio of writers than yourself and Al and Ram to be leading the Symbiote endeavor at Marvel. I mean it, mate. It's great. I couldn't think of 3 people who are better placed to work within that part of the universe, and the proof of it is on the page. And anybody watching this can pick up issue 1 and beyond from the links attached to our conversation. And Alex, mate, it's always a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.